How do you win a knockout chess tournament? In this video, I take you through the winner's journey. How did Magnus Carlsen win the FTX Crypto Cup? Well, we're going to find out. First up, we have the preliminaries. After 3 days, Magnus ended up with 8.5 out of 14. The top 8 players make it into the knockout. We have the quarterfinals, semi-finals and the finals. So straight away, 8 players are eliminated. He got 8.5 out of 15. 4 wins, 2 losses, 9 draws. Not the best finish for Magnus. He ends up about mid-table. So first up, he takes on Hikaru Nakamura in the quarterfinals. 2-2 on day 1, 2-2 on day 2. But then they play 2 blitz games. Let's check out one of them. Timestamps are shown below. First up, we have Carlsen versus Nakamura. Then we have the summary of the game. Then we have Carlsen versus Radjabov. And then finally, Carlsen versus Wesley. And then the summary. I summarize at the end of each game to make sure you've learned a few key points. Carlsen has white, Nakamura has black. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5. Knight c3, bishop e7, we have the queen's gambit declined. Nakamura plays this often. Bishop f4, castle e3. And after knight d7, there are many moves for white. You can go a3, you can go c5. Locking it up straight away, but getting space. You can go queen c2, but today, Carlsen played bishop e2. Taking on c4, and he doesn't recapture straight away, he goes castle. Now this gives black the chance to play knight b6 to protect his pawn. Another option is c5 to break up the center. But knight b6 played. Let's attack knight with a4. Black stops it with a5. Now e4 getting the center. I mean, you see these in queen's pawn openings. If white gets the center, then he tends to be down a pawn. But black's pieces are not really out. I mean, they're not on optimal squares. c5. Black breaks up the center, but this does give white the option of knight b5, planning bishop c7 to win the knight. Knight e8, defending the c7 square, now taking on c5. And black does not even go for a queen trade. He plays knight d7. Take, and queen c2. White is better here, he's got more space. Black is lacking development. Queen e7 and e5, a really good move, stopping black getting his knight back in the game. h6, rook d1, knight b6, keep the bishop, knight d5. You attack white's bishop, but white plays bishop b1 first, threatening mate. You can't play g6 because you lose that pawn. So f5 was played. Got to open up this diagonal, so e takes f6. And now knight takes f6. So the knight is back in the game, and it defends the h7 square. White now plays bishop e5. And after bishop d7, white plays a very forcing move, but it wins straight away, and it doesn't look like it wins. But bishop takes f6, and white is just crashing through now. G takes f6 was played in the game, but after knight takes f6, you can actually play rook d7. It's a deflection. If you take with a queen, you lose the bishop. If you take with a knight, you actually allow white in, check, and you're just flushing the king out. So now bishop h5, the queen can come to g6, and there's no good way to stop it. You can play knight e5, which stops it, but then take, rook e1, check, and it's going to be checkmate very soon. If you move back, that's mate. So in this position, got to take with a pawn. If you take with a rook, you lose this rook in a couple moves. Check, king here, check, and then you pick up the rook. If you go check and then king f7, then knight e5. Bishop e5, bishop d7, take. Can't take with a queen, you drop your bishop. So you've got to take with a pawn, and now rook e1. Rook takes d5 is now a threat, winning the knight. Queen out of the way, and queen takes c5. It turns out black just chucked the bishop. The best move for black was actually to move the knight out the way. But then this knight can come back in the game. And there's so many threats. Knight f5, knight h6. Also, white has queen g6 always lurking. If you take it, because white's knight is so dangerous, then after rook takes d4, now rook g4 check is also a threat. So all of white's pieces are in the attack. A crushing victory. Summarizing this game. Queen's gambit declined. Very solid setup. And after bishop e2, take castle, knight b6. I mean, this is the first moment. Hitting Nakamura with this surprise. You get the center, but you're a pawn down, and well, that's the risk you take in these kind of queen's pawn openings. c5, knight b5. So c5, that's the first key turning point, not the best move. The best move was actually bishop b4. Threatening to capture, knight takes e4, so he played queen c2, and then really, well, maybe black is finding a way to get his pieces out. Maybe bishop d7, bishop c6, queen e7. But c5, the first error from black, knight b5. White comes in onto that square, offering a queen trade, but Nakamura doesn't take it, and when the queens are remaining on the board, white got a kingside attack. e5, what a move, stopping the knight coming back in the game. Rooks to the middle, dropping the bishop back, really cool. Just because you attack my bishop doesn't mean I have to move it. I can play bishop b1 first to threaten mate. You got to deal with that situation first, en passant, and then bishop improves its placement. You see back here, I mean, after knight d5, bishop g3. You could play that, but then he's got knight b4, so no way. So knight d5, who cares? You go bishop b1. Also, in this position, no way do you play this, because you just drop your advantage, and then black can actually get his pieces out. Even though he's a pawn down, he's got the bishop pair, his pieces are actually in the game now. So no, do not drop your advantage. Bishop b1, great move. En passant, bishop in the middle, and tactic, bishop takes f6, crashing through. Rook e1, Nakamura blundered with queen g7, and yeah, you just chucked the bishop. Carlsen also ended up winning the second Blitz game, so he's through to the semi-final. In the semi-finals, Carlsen faces Timur Radjabov. On day 1 it was 2-2, on day 2 he won 3-1. Let's check out one of his victories. Carlsen has white, Radjabov has black, d4, knight f6, now 3 g6, c4, bishop g7, g3, both sides go for the fianchetto setup. c5. In these kind of positions, you don't really want to go d5 because you actually shut in your own bishop, so Carlsen keeps it flexible for one move, giving Radjabov the chance to take, but then white's got his knight in the middle now. Castle, knight c3, very important move here. You don't want black to actually break with d5. So you've got to play knight c3 first before you castle. Queen c7, attacking the pawn. And now, knight d5, just totally changing the structure. If you take, then knight e7 check. And then you can grab the bishop and then castle. And then... So after knight d5, take. Queen b6, you attack the knight. Knight moves out of the way. Castle, attack the queen, and then bishop d4. So a really cool transfer, because black's bishop is very strong. Hit the queen, offer a trade. Radjabov says no. Rook e1, bishop d7 and e4. So white has space in the center. I think a very important point here is the fact that black's queen is a bit offside here. I mean, it is controlling a few light squares, but I don't think it's on the best square. Knight g4 played, offering a trade. Take. Queen d4 check. King back. And h3, kicking the knight away. If you go knight e5, which was played, you can hit the knight again with f4. Knight e5, f4, knight c4, and e5, just coming through the center. One option was bishop f1. Stop black moving the knight for one move, rook c8, and then you can play something. So e5 played, queen b6, and king out the way. King h2, rook c8, rook c1, threatening to take the knight, take. One option was knight takes b2, and then knight d3. How can white continue this? Well, maybe he's got to trade rooks first. Trade here, and then go rook b1. So then when the knight moves out of the way, you take that pawn. If we go back here, knight b2, with rook b1, knight d3, you attack in the rook. Once you deal with this, then knight c5, you actually manage to defend this, even though you can keep playing this. e6 is possible, g4. So bishop e8, a passive move, but this gives Carlsen a chance to attack the knight. Knight retreats. Now you just go e6, getting a lot of space. f6, g4, really just shutting out this bishop. Rook c5. Planning to go rook c8 because black needs to trade pieces because he's got less space. But with rook c5, white now changes the structure in his favour. Take, knight moves out of the way, and this could be a weakness. But also, this bishop is now in the game. Because in the future, d6 could be an option. Knight c8, rook c1, and knight d6, dropping the pawn. You can't play b6 now because d6. And also, white's next move is d7, forking. So knight c8 was not the best move. One option was rook c8, and then you just keep playing from here. Knight c3, coming in to e4, d6, f5, game goes on. Knight c8, bad move. Rook c1, knight d6. Black loses a pawn, king f8, king g3, knight c3, f5, g5, get more space. b5, knight e2, rerouting, knight d4, knight c6. Knight d4, a4, king f2, take, take. So the a file has opened up. Black is still very cramped. He's a pawn down. Rook a1, bishop f3, check. Offer a rook trade. Can't take, because after take, that pawn, you can't guard it. Rook c2 played, rook a3, h4. King g7, defend your pawn, so then the knight can move later. Knight c6, huge decision. If you take, well, that passed pawn is just further advanced now. So Radjabov doesn't take the knight, rook b7, king up, rook a2, get the file, entry squares on here and here. Option to go to a7 to offer a rook trade. Take, rook c7, and rook a8. And Radjabov had enough. Carlsen, he just made it look so easy. Knight has to stay there to defend his bishop. King can make his way forward. King d4, c5, b6, attacking that. Black cannot do anything. Can't move anything. Rook here, in. If rook b7, maybe knight e7 is a cool finish because the king also attacks the knight. Knight e7, really cool. So Carlsen wins day 2. He wins 3-1, and he's in the final. Wesley So against Magnus Carlsen. On day 1, it was 2-2. On day 2, it was 2-2. In the blitz, it was 1 victory each. Now we go straight to the end, the Armageddon game. White has 5 minutes, black has 4 minutes. White has to win in order to win the cup. Carlsen has white, Wesley So has black. Let's see what happened. There is no increment until move 60. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Bishop c4, we have the Italian game. Knight f6, d3. Bishop c5, castle, h6, c3. Castle, b4. Bishop goes back, a4. So white is getting a lot of space very quickly. Black can react with a5 or a6. a6 played. Knight d2. d6. Pawn chain in the middle. Rook e1, knight e7. Normal way to reroute the knight, come to g6, and there is another idea, c6, d5. Before black gets a chance to break in the center, white breaks first with d4. Take. White is the center, but black has to react fast, and he does so with d5. And it looks like white has to make a decision. He might take, he might drop the bishop back. Take, but this looks perfectly okay for black. So Magnus here actually played e5. You attack me, I attack you. You're not going to take because after take your structure is just compromised. Absolutely awful structure. So after e5, he moves the knight, but then bishop just comes back to f1. Knight f4, knight b3, so it's just a total change in the pawn structure. You don't normally see this in the Italian. Knight g6, a5, keep the bishop back, and bishop takes f4. It's just such a huge decision to give up the bishop pair in this way. When I saw this position, I was never ever going to play bishop takes f4. I would have played bishop e3. Then get the queen out to d2 to put pressure on the knight, and I'm going to follow up with moves like rook c1, and then the knight can come to c5. I checked with the engine. Bishop e3 is also one of the top 3 choices. Bishop f4 was another choice. Take, queen d2. Now, why did Carlsen give up the bishop pair? It's for development. Queen now attacks the knight moves, and now knight c5. f6, black breaks up the structure. Bishop d3, attack the knight. f5 now. So white now has a protected passed pawn. Bishop back to c2. Ideas of rerouting to b3 to occupy another diagonal. Rook e8, g3, stopping knight f4. Also preparing, with a move like g3, you're preparing h4, h5. Get rid of that knight, take back with the b pawn, bishop e6, rook b1. This is the target now. Rook b8, rook e3. Really cool rook swing. Knight back, rook b3. 1 up over attack. Two rooks on a b file, queen c8, defend the pawn, and now knight h4. Is that a target? Well, black has 3 on it, so no, it isn't a target. So what's the idea? Rook f8, knight g2. So this knight is rerouting to f4 to attack the bishop. Also, you can play h4 to stop black playing g5. Bishop just goes back, h4. Bishop a4, cool move. Getting the bishops off, because black, he's got less space, so bishop a4 is cool. Rook back, take. Queen takes. Knight c6, attacking the center. White defends it. g5. Getting space, controlling f4, so then the knight can't go in. Take, take. f4, king g7, king f2, rook h8, take, rook h2, pin the knight to the king, but now queen f3, attacking d5 and f5. Knight takes d4, queen takes d5, knight goes back, but now e6, and white is just coming through. Queen d8, offer a queen trade, but you trade on my terms. If black now captures, then white's going to have a passed d-pawn. Capture happens, rook d8, rook d2. With this move, now you're going to take on b7 next, because after knight e5, that pawn now drops. Well, what happens if you take this way, because you defend? Well, get the king out of the way. You can go king g1, or even rook e1 is really good. The threat is now rook e8. Forcing promotion. So if you go king f7, you can go king g1. King g1 is really cool. Move the rook out of the way, and you can go knight f4. You can even go g6 check. Really cool tactic here. Because after knight f4 check, you pick up the rook. After knight takes a5, rook e1, knight c6. Now you can go king g1. Gotta get out of the way, so then you can actually move the knight. So king g1, you attack the rook. If the rook moves all the way back, then knight f4. Knight e6 check is coming. Rook d2, knight e5 played. That pawn drops, king g6. Black's position is collapsing, that pawn's going to drop. King out the way soon, so then knight f4 is next. Also rook d5 is coming as well. Rook d5 first, question the knight, then that knight can move. So knight e5, take, king g6, take on c7. And in this position, black had enough, because rook c8 is next. Also c6, defend the pawn, and then rook c8, forcing promotion.
Good night, William.
Good night. Summarizing this game, we have the Italian. All normal moves, white gets space very quickly with b4 and a4. Knight d2, rook e1, and this is the first key moment. White has to win this game, so he strikes in the center. It's a good move anyway, take, and after d5, e5, the second key moment. Just because you attack my bishop doesn't mean I have to move it. Knight moves out of the way, and bishop all the way back. Total change in the structure. Hit the bishop, and third key moment. Deliberately giving up the bishop for the knight. Attack the knight. Knight comes in, breaks up the structure, and bishop d3 attacking the knight, forcing f5. Now white's got a passed pawn. A protected passed pawn in the middle game. That is such an asset. Bishop back. g3 with h4, controlling the f4 and h4 squares. Take. Attack the pawn, and cool moment. A rook lift, putting pressure on the b pawn. Carlsen is outplaying Wesley. Knight h4. You're not attacking the pawn, you're coming back to reroute the knight. Bishops come off. Defend your pawn, you get the space, but then after take f4. Transforming the structure in white's favour. King out the way, take. Queen f3, attack the pawn, coming in, e6, and trading queens on his terms. Take. Defend your passed pawn, coming into b7. Take. And then after take, too many threats. Game over. Magnus, he ends up winning $60,000 plus 0.6 Bitcoin. Wesley, so he comes in second place with $40,000 plus 0.4 Bitcoin. Here's YouTube's suggestion for what to watch next. But if you don't like their option, you might like Alireza Firouzja beats Magnus Carlsen in 29 seconds. If you don't like that option, you might like Magnus Carlsen beats Alireza Firouzja in 21 seconds. Thanks for watching.